What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. Mike, you'd mentioned you had some weird shit in store for us in the last episode, and this is this episode, and I'm excited.
Well, welcome to part one of my lecture series titled Bigfoot is Not Bigfoot.
Ooh, I like it already.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily true, but it sounds catchier that way.
Gotta sell it, baby.
That's what I'm saying. Create a little zing, a little talk among the town folk, you know. What? Bigfoot's not Bigfoot? Why, no, he is not. But yeah, he kind of is. It's more this series of shows, and by series, it doesn't mean next week I'm doing the next part in the series. It just means that there's a lot of things to cover. So I'm kind of trying to break things up, you know, kind of by similarities, I guess. But it's going along with something I've talked about on the show many times about Bigfoot not necessarily being a flesh and blood creature, but being more of a some sort of, I don't want to say spiritual, but some sort of creature that's not native to this plane of existence, maybe is a better way to put it, or is able to phase in and out of this plane of existence, something along those lines. Not so much a ghost, but for this episode, I think what I'm going to do, I've kind of gone back and forth with how I wanna do this. So I think what I'm gonna do to begin with is I'm gonna give you a few scenarios, and I want you to tell me whether or not these, in your opinion, are Bigfoot sightings or a poltergeist attack.
Ooh.
Now, what I want to keep in mind is that all of these events that I'm going to go over are going to be, there was no, well, I shouldn't say in all of them, but in most of them, there was no actual Bigfoot sighting.
Ooh, okay.
So before I get into this stuff, I want to go over a specific term. So for UFO sightings, we've got the close encounter classification. For Bigfoot sightings, they've got a class system. So the ones that I'm going to be dealing with here are specifically ones that the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization signify as Class B reports. And a Class B report is any report where a possible Sasquatch was observed at a great distance or in poor lighting conditions, but it also includes any incidents in any other circumstance that did not afford a clear view of the subject. So this would be things attributed to a Bigfoot that necessarily where there was an actual sighting, visual sighting of a Bigfoot.
Okay.
So there's various classifications of Bigfoot sightings, and the Class B are the ones that I'm going to be speaking on here for the most part. We've got, actually, one of the cases is one that we've covered before. So actually, just to kind of, I guess, start things off, to provide an example of what I'm talking about. Do you remember when we did an episode on the Ape Canyon attack?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. For anyone who's not familiar, I'll give you a quick rundown. Happened in 1924 in Washington State, in this area. I believe it's at the base of Mount St. Helens, that's been dubbed Ape Canyon, despite the fact that it's not a canyon, and it's not inhabited by apes. But I guess the name comes after the story. But the story it's attributed to a man named Fred Beck, who was one of the witnesses of this attack. And the story goes that he was a member of the mining party, and some versions of the story say that he shot a Bigfoot. He actually refutes that and says it was one of the other men in the mining party, that he used a pseudonym, Hank. And apparently this Hank character is the one that actually put the story out in the papers. But anyway, they took a shot at one of the creatures. I don't think they hit it though, but they went back to a cabin, and later that night, something started tossing boulders down onto the cabin and rushing at the door trying to break it down. Ahead of that, a few days while they were out on the expedition, the miners actually did witness large tracks in the area that they were mining and around the cabin. The week leading up to the incident where they shot at the ape, or the ape man, Bigfoot, whatever, they would hear whistling, it just drifting through the woods, high-pitched whistling, and it seemed to be going back and forth, like a call and repeat sort of thing. But through this whole, it basically, all of this led up to them seeing the Bigfoot and shooting at it. And then the next morning, after the attack on the cabin, where these rocks were being thrown and things were hitting the side of the cabin and trying to beat down the door, the story goes that they saw one of these creatures at the edge of a cliff, and they shot it and it fell off and died. But Fred Beck, who's like the face of this story, he actually put out a book where he talked about it. But he states that he never perceived these creatures as being flesh and blood. He perceived them as being spirits that were attacking the house. And he said that he actually had a history of psychic abilities, or what he described as being clairvoyant, since he was a child. And he would have these weird visions and meetings with spiritual beings. So the reason I bring this case up is, for one, he attributed these things to being spirits of some sort. And two, this is before, it was 1924, so this is before like the modern Bigfoot craze, where Bigfoot was well-known creature. And if you take away the fact that there was a hairy creature and just focus on the fact that there's rocks raining down on the roof of a house and something banging on the door and knocking on the side of the house, along with the disembodied whistles, that's very similar to poltergeist phenomenon.
Right, I get your point. And they didn't actually see, on the night of the attack, they didn't see any creature.
Yeah, they only heard, they heard the rocks raining down, and they heard the thumping, and they just assumed. And I believe that it's been a while since I've really went deep into this case, but from what I remember, I think they also heard heavy footsteps on the roof.
Yes.
Which is another thing that's often reported in poltergeist attack. Like there's just a lot of phenomena that cross over between the two. The pounding on the roof. Like there was one poltergeist case where the person who was experiencing the events, he said it sounded like someone was standing on his roof with a sledgehammer, just pounding, trying to pound through the roof. And every time they went up, there was nothing there.
Yikes, dude. I actually experienced something like that. Something very similar, so I know what they mean.
Really?
Oh, yeah, dude. I used to work at this tattoo / bong shop a long time ago when Mateo was a young man. And we would chill there after hours and just talk about philosophy and stuff like that. And the ceiling of the place was like, they had put like black contact paper over the whole ceiling to make the ceiling black. Underneath was just like that, like holy foam board that's like in schools and hospitals and shit. But so some of the paper had started to droop down in some areas. And I would say it was me, my wife, and I'd say like 3 other dudes that worked there. And I'd say it'd have to be like at 11:30 at night. And the front was shut up and gated up and locked and all that shit. There's a back door that we had open. And we were all just sitting there bullshitting, playing music and shit. All of a sudden, we start to hear like a straight up knock, not like a tap that you would like you get hear in reports of goofy shit and weird shit happening like this. It was a knock. It was on the ceiling, and it was in the we were in the back part of the building, and it was on the ceiling where we all were, and it's it's just like you'd figure. Like one of us heard it and looked at one of us, and then somebody said, "Be quiet," and we all looked up, and you can clearly hear where it's coming from. It's coming from the ceiling right above us, and the knock just started getting louder and louder until it just started turning into banging, and then it started turning from a bang into, slamming with. The way I would describe it is somebody with a shovel on the roof. To where like we all like set down our guitars and backed up. We were waiting for somebody to crash through the fucking ceiling. And as audibly, I found this strange, audibly as it sounded like they broke through the ceiling. And we all heard it. We all like kind of braced ourselves and got ready to, we thought somebody was trying to break in there. And as soon as that sound happened, you can hear tapping on the paper that was hanging from the ceiling in the same spot. And there's no damage being done. It was all just sound. But I found it interesting because the sound started outside. We could hear it barrel through the ceiling. And then as soon as it got through, it started tapping all over that droopy piece of paper. Until we left. We were like, we're getting the fuck out of here.
What do you make of that?
To me, it could have only been something paranormal. One of the dudes grabbed the store phone to call the police. We were sure it was a break-in. There was no mistaking. There wasn't only a couple people who heard this. It was everybody there. We all got.
Yeah, when you get a room full of witnesses, there's really nothing you can do.
Not at all. Like I grabbed my fucking, my now wife, but I grabbed my chick and I put her behind me. I was like, holy shit, get your keys out. Get ready to go out the front door. We've had tons of crazy shit happen there. So we're used to some weird shit. Like there's a bank next door and it got robbed. And so we heard all that commotion, and then all of a sudden had cops bust in through our back door. Like there's a lot of weird shit that went down there, but nothing like, is paranormal, I guess. But yeah, that one was very weird. It was so loud. I thought somebody had a pickaxe or a shovel on the roof. I was like, dude, they're going to break in through the fucking ceiling.
Yeah, that's when it really sounds like there's something breaking through the ceiling. That's fucking terrifying. What do you do? What if it does break through? Then what? Right, yeah.
And as far as it sounded, that's what happened. Trying to lighten up the situation in my mind, I'm like, an opossum's going to fucking fall right out of the ceiling, like right through the tile and land here. And we're all going to fucking scream and run out of here. But it really sounded like something was breaking its way through the ceiling. So, I imagine if you put that in a setting to where you're in the woods in a fucking cabin and maybe take away the fact that you saw some hairy, big ape type thing. That's only poltergeist activity.
So I've got a couple cases here that kind of, I don't think you're going to be able to differentiate between whether or not this is a Class B Bigfoot sighting or if it's a poltergeist account. So I'm not going to give, I'll give the details afterwards. I just want to give you like a brief synopsis of the story, and then I'll get a little deeper into the story after. But all right, so the first one I'm going to tell you. So here's the, I guess, symptoms, we'll say. All right. So this family experienced thumping sounds on the ceiling. Doors in their house would swing open by themselves. Objects were thrown inside the house. And at one time, there were so many pebbles that rained down on the roof that it sounded like a thunderstorm.
Oh, whoa! I'm sure you've maybe not done it yourself or built something to where it required it, but I'm sure you've seen like a dump truck spill out a bunch of gravel.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of rocks.
Yeah, I had like 6 tons of rocks that I had to move for landscaping this summer.
Oh wow. Okay, so you have like a fresh example to compare that to.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. Yeah. So based on that, based on just those alone, what would you say that was?
I mean, it sounds exactly like why am I forgetting the name? Oh God, is it Pinhurst haunting where the matches started falling from the ceiling, like lit matches?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, of course these rocks were falling outside, but
right
to make it sound like a rainstorm, I don't think Bigfoot are capable of doing that. I mean, like we're talking about a dump truck. If it's,
right.
I mean, like imagine an amount of rocks hitting the roof of this cabin to where it sounds like a thunderstorm, and how many rocks I would take to get that sound for 2 seconds. 1, 2. That's an insane amount of rocks, unless Bigfoot's got a dump truck that floats.
Yeah.
That's 100% paranormal activity.
So this event happened in 1946 in New South Wales, Australia. And a man named George Knott and his family purchased this plot of land with a house on it that had actually been abandoned for a while. So shortly after they moved in, they started hearing all these noises like knocking on the walls, thumping sounds on the ceiling. The doors would open and close by themselves. Objects inside the house would move, as well as being thrown from where they were, where they were stationed. And then again, the pebbles that rained down on the house. Now, all of that sounds to me like a haunting, long abandoned property, stuff moving, doors opening and closing. But it gets weirder because the activity seemed to be accompanied by large human-like footprints that were found around the yard. And on more than one occasion, there was a massive ape man that actually broke into the house. And on one of those occasions, the ape man attempted to pull Mrs. Knott outside the house, but she was able to escape its grasp.
Holy shit.
So
okay.
How do you account for the things inside the house happening? The doors opening and closing and the objects being moved around. But then are these two separate things that are happening? It doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem likely that it would be two separate instances of strange occurrences where you've got the all the phenomena that occur with the poltergeist activity, but then you also have this cryptid that just happens to be there, like, oh hey, I heard you got some ghost activity, I'm here to steal your wife. Yeah, it doesn't seem likely to be. So to me, it's got to be related. Here's another case for you. This case, there was a woman who invited her niece, who was a young teenage girl, to spend the winter with her in a cottage that was somewhat isolated. Shortly after she arrived, they started hearing pounding sounds on the outside walls that would reverberate through the house, and they basically shake the home. Occasionally, a window would get broken from the outside of the house, and the events would typically take place between the hours of 8 p.m. and 12 midnight. There were several witnesses to the occurrences, including a police officer, and basically it seemed to escalate when whenever the girl was sleeping.
Sleeping.
Yep.
Hmm.
So this one, there's nothing moving around inside the house. It's all knocks and pounding on the outside of the house.
Do we know what the cop witnessed?
Yeah. So this case, this is a case known as the Chilliwack poltergeist, which took place in British Columbia.
Oh, wow. Okay, so they're actually calling it a poltergeist.
They're calling this, right. But everything else about it, it's in an isolated cabin. You're hearing knocks and pounding sounds on the outside walls of the house, and the window is getting broken from the outside in. In fact, at one point, the woman whose name was Anna Dariba, she got sick of having her windows broken, so she started putting wire screening and plastic over the windows, hoping that it would prevent them from breaking. Like if something was being thrown through, it would catch on the screen and the plastic before breaking the window. As soon as she put the screen up in the kitchen, the window broke. Through the plastic, through the screen, and the window broke. So this officer, he was a sheriff's deputy, that his name was A.J. Edwards, and he was personally called to the house on 4 separate occasions. And on one call, he was there were other adults in the house. Everyone was in the same room discussing the sounds that they were hearing. The only one who was not there was Anna's niece, Kathleen, who was sleeping at the time. And as they were talking, huge pounding sound from the outside of the house. On this night, they actually had floodlights set up around the house, so he quickly ran outside. There was no evidence of anybody present at all. Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to just look at it without the term poltergeist, it would sound like something was physically attacking the house, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of the last case, to where it was having stuff happen inside, and now this is all outside.
Yeah. I've got another case I don't want to get too far into, because I think we might do a show on this one in the future. So I'll just be really brief about it. But we have an event where this took place in London. I'm not going to, we won't play the game with this one because I'm going to do a show on this in the future, but it's called the Battersea Poltergeist. And the events here basically escalated like you would in, like you'd see in a lot of poltergeist cases, where it starts with noise, then objects moving and rapping on the walls, knocking, pounding, all that stuff. But they started hearing these heavy footsteps as well. So the investigators laid down this white powder on the floor to see if something was physically walking and was just invisible. And they found a single large humanoid footprint inside the powder. No footprint leading in, no footprint leading out. Just one single footprint in the middle of this powder.
Whoa, that is fucking weird. Now, I got to ask you, because you had mentioned a large humanoid footprint in the first case. I mean, are we talking Bigfoot big here, or is it just like a size fucking 12?
Yeah. No, like abnormally large.
Okay, because there's plenty of ghost encounters. I believe there's, you probably remember it, watching it as a kid, the episode of Unsolved Mysteries about that boat. And they would see people like splashing in a pool that weren't there, and wet footprints would appear outside the pool shortly afterwards. So that, and I mean, other cases as well, for sure. But that I would attribute to poltergeist activity. But if we're talking Bigfoot-sized prints, that's a different game.
Yeah, but but then what? Is invisible Bigfoot actually responsible for hauntings? Like, what the fuck? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And especially, this was in London, so it's not like there's any woods around, This is fucking London where this happened.
Right. Not a large ape population.
No,
in
right.
London.
Yeah. When was the last Bigfoot sighting in London?
Right.
I'm gonna guess never.
Portals? Yes. Bigfoot? Not
Sure,
so much.
Plenty of portals. Plenty of ghosts. I don't know. All right, so I got another one. So speaking of Bigfoot, before we get too much further into this, how do you think the Lawnmower 4.0 would hold up to Bigfoot's balls?
Shit. I don't know, but I think we should find out.
Me too. Come with me. Let's go on a journey. All right, we need to creep up and be very quiet. Very quiet. Any small sounds will startle it.
I don't think there's really a Bigfoot out here, man, do you?
Of course there's really a Bigfoot out here. I wouldn't be coming out here with the Lawnmower 4.0 to shave Bigfoot's balls if there was no Bigfoot out here. But shh, be quiet.
Won't the sound of the Lawnmower 4.0 freak it out?
No, it's got 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. It's gonna ease it right into shh, there's one right there.
Holy crap.
All right, dude, run up and get it and hold it for me, and I'm gonna shave its balls.
Run up and get it.
Just put in a Phil Nelson or something.
All right, man. It's for science. Let's do this.
For science. Yeah, he got him. Yeah, he did.
All right, it's okay, Bigfoot. It's got skin-safe ceramic replaceable blades.
It's waterproof too. Hold on. It's a good thing I didn't charge it before I came, but you know, the Lawnmower 4.0, it does come with a wireless charging system. So, and even though it's the middle of the night and we're in the woods, there's also a 4000K LED spotlight on this guy. So let's go, Bigfoot.
Hurry, Mike, I can't hold him forever.
Just one little, we're just getting the balls here, buddy. Just, there we go. All right. Now, I'm going to take off, and then, I guess he seems pretty pissed off, so just be careful when you let him go.
All right, on three. 1, 2.
All right, so clearly this works, and if it works on Bigfoot, it can work for you. So go to manscaped.com, use the Bigfoot's coming. Use the promo code WhatCast for a discount at checkout. Get yourself the Lawnmower 4.0 and also body wash, deodorants, underwear, all the things you need to keep your body sexy and smooth. Manscaped.com, promo code WhatCast. You too can shave Bigfoot's balls. This incident, there was a stone rain that crashed down on the roof of a house, and then there were slaps and pounding noises and knocking on the outside of the house with no one present. Every time they'd go out, no one would be there.
Stone rain.
Yeah.
And that was outside of the house, not inside.
Right. Stones raining down on the roof of the house.
That's so weird.
But this one, it was presumed that the stone rain was coming from a ridge line behind the house. This event took place in 1978 in Minerva, Ohio, and it was reported by the Clayton family, who were experiencing all the noises on the outside of their house, so they assumed that somebody was messing with them, basically coming to their house and just causing a ruckus. And then they started having these rocks just raining down on their house out of nowhere. And they could never see anybody, but these rocks were coming down, crashing on the house. This one is actually considered to be a Class B Bigfoot sighting.
Oh, wow.
But do you see what I mean? Like, there's no differentiating between these.
Yeah. I didn't expect to have examples this severe.
Here's one that is the craziest to me. There was a family in I'm gonna butcher this name, but this took place in 2008 in Monongahela, Pennsylvania. I think that's how you say it. A family reported seeing shadowy apparitions around their house and in their house. They would smell sulfurous stench like a lit match, freshly lit match, or rotten eggs, and they would hear strange screams that would echo in the night. And on one night, August 24th, 2008, they heard something that sounded like heavy footsteps walking across their roof. So with that, what would you consider this?
This I would consider a Bigfoot Class B encounter.
This, in fact, was. And the only reason shadowy apparitions, that's not an ape man. That is a shadowy apparition, like a
Right.
shadow person, you know? But this event happened during a period of time where there were numerous sightings of both Bigfoot and UFOs. So again, we get the crossover with the haunting, the UFO, and the Bigfoot stuff all in one place.
Right.
What's that all about? It's like fucking Skinwalker Ranch or Stardust Ranch or any of those fucking places. Like, why do all these things cross over? And then, so all these took place at people's houses for the most part. But in 2005, there was a police officer who was camping in Virginia. And from his campsite, he heard these strange voices echoing through the forest. And as the night wore on, all of a sudden, pebbles began to rain down on the picnic table at his campsite. But no one was present to throw the rocks. He heard no noises that would indicate someone was close enough to throw pebbles. Nothing was in the tree above him that could explain a rain of pebbles. But these pebbles just started raining down on his picnic table. And then the following morning, he heard a strange garbled language that was coming from the forest itself.
Ooh.
So if you were to take this event and put it in a suburban setting, it would become a haunting. Like maybe the campsite was haunted, but this is considered a Bigfoot sighting.
Right, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, even the vocalizations of Bigfoots. I mean, if you listen to them and read about them, it's usually gargled and gurgled a lot of the time.
Right, yeah. But the thing, so I want to take a step back from cases for a minute and just kind of get into the history of poltergeist briefly and kind of go into the similarities that exist between poltergeist reports and some of these Class B Bigfoot reports. So we all know what poltergeist is. Like when you say poltergeist, everyone, kind of gets what you're saying. You don't really need to go into explanation, but historically, poltergeist activity was attributed to being angry spirits or demons, in some cases even fairies. Stay tuned for a future episode of Bigfoot's Not Bigfoot. But in the late 19th century, mediums and spiritualists begin to claim that they were able to manifest poltergeists during the seances. So they'd put on these elaborate seances and poltergeist activity was purported to take place. We've covered these spirit mediums before in the past, and there's varying degree of believability depending on which one you're talking about. But typical activity would be knocking, moving objects, things like that. But in the 1930s, this guy named Nandor Fodor presented a theory that was a little bit less supernatural, a little bit more, or a little bit less spiritual. But the theory that he proposed is kind of what a lot of paranormal researchers stick to today, oddly enough. But he proposed that most of the activity seemed to be centered around an individual. in these cases. And in many of these cases, that individual was a young girl who was approaching puberty or in her teenage years, typically a woman under 20. He theorized that the change in hormones in this stage and the stress that can create in young women, along with sexual tension, may produce like this perfect storm that creates a psychokinetic phenomenon, which results in the knocking or the moving of objects or any combination of the above. Oddly enough, though, there's never been, well, I shouldn't say there's never been, there hadn't been any serious research done on the topic until the late 70s, when there were these two British researchers named Alan Gauld and A.D. Cornell, who really began to conduct serious research and perform analysis on different types of activity. And they studied over 500 international cases from 1800 through to the present at the time. And they found a lot of common occurrences among all of their cases. So I'll just do a quick breakdown of some of what they discovered. But they discovered in 64% of poltergeist cases, there was movement, disappearances, or reappearances of small items. 58% of the activity appeared after nightfall. 48% involved knocking or pounding. 36% of the cases included the movement of heavy objects, such as furniture or the opening of doors. 24% of these occurrences lasted more than a year. So that would mean 76% ended within a year of initially taking place. In 16% of the cases, there was communication between the poltergeist and an individual. Typically, the individual would be the one that the activity was centered around. And then in 12%, there was reports of windows being opened. So to kind of compare that to Class B reports, and also what we know of more modern poltergeist activity, I guess they kind of go along with a lot of these. So similarities with Class B reports, there have been many, many reports of Bigfoot appearing to women and children for some reason. And I've even heard it said that women who are menstruating tend to attract Bigfoot. Whether it be it senses the hormones or what, I don't know. But I've heard that. And a lot of the missing 411 cases where the kids are found, they talk about some sort of hairy creature. In some cases, it's a talking bear. Some cases, it's a wolf man. Some cases, it's just a hairy man. But in all of their cases, it keeps them safe. So, there's the similarity there. Women and children seem to be the ones that get Bigfoot to manifest more often. Another thing is heavy breathing with no discernible source. So you won't hear anything walk up on you. You won't see anything, but you'll just all of a sudden hear heavy breathing in the forest. Another one is anomalous whistles, specifically shrill, high-pitched whistles. Sounds of heavy movement, stomping, knocking, scratching, tearing sounds. Anomalous laughter. We've heard this many times in poltergeist stories where there's just hideous laughter or the laughter of children, but that's also reported in a lot of Class B Bigfoot reports, just anomalous laughter without a source in the woods. The sound of children crying or animal mimicry is another thing that's reported in Class B sightings that's also reported in poltergeist activity. A lot of poltergeist activity will describe growls or snarling noises, along with the sound of children crying or laughing. We also hear a lot of reports of strange smells that typically are described as sounding or smelling like sulfur or rotten eggs. Like the skunk ape, for instance. He didn't smell like a skunk. They just called him a skunk ape because he stunk, but most people said it smelled like rotting eggs or sulfur.
Right.
And we get pretty much, well, I shouldn't say pretty much the majority, but a vast number of poltergeist cases have this sulfuric smell accompanying it. And that's a lot of the more religious leaning experiencers attribute that to being demonic, like it's like the smell of brimstone or whatever, you know.
Hell itself.
Yeah, the stench of hell itself. But the weirdest thing that you would not normally attribute to Bigfoot, but is seen in a lot of hauntings or poltergeist cases, is electrical interference and the appearance of strange lights. So we've heard that a lot with poltergeist activity, where there'll be a light that'll show up. Like, for instance, you ever hear of the drummer of Tedworth case?
Oh God, it sounds so familiar.
It's a poltergeist case. It's took place in Tedworth in England, which is, Tedworth doesn't exist. It's now called Wiltshire. But basically the case was your typical stuff with the knocking and the pounding taking place in the night. But there were also disembodied voices, including high-pitched whistles and anomalous screams, and the smell of sulfur just emanating from seemingly nowhere. And there were these glimmering lights that would appear in the children's bedroom. So, you know, that's just one instance of these lights, but there's just all these cases where there's these ghost lights. And in Skinwalker Ranch, for instance, reported these glowing balls of light that would just fly around the property. Same thing with Stardust Ranch. But these ghost lights also seem to show up in areas where there's a lot of Bigfoot activity. There's this place in Texas called Big Thicket, and I believe it's it's on Bragg Road, but it's called Big Thicket, and it's an area that's well known for Bigfoot sightings.
It's also my porn star name.
Big Thicket. That's right, ladies.
He's just a handsome country boy. Sorry.
Gonna get some cut off Daisy Dukes. Rip the sleeves off my flannel. I'm gonna do a little dance. Big Thicket.
No touching, just dancing.
Touching costs you extra. Let you run your fingers through my big thicket. We really need to start an OnlyFans. Shark fucking in big thickets.
Overly hairy groins. I don't have a thick wicket anymore thanks to the lawnmower.
Yeah. We took care of that last week. But, you know, maybe we'll have to do that again for you. But this area is, in addition to being known for Bigfoot sightings, is also known for ghost lights. And there have been so many documented cases of people experiencing these ghost lights and seeing Bigfoot within, you know, the span of a few minutes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think we covered a case where somebody actually saw Bigfoot turn into a light.
Yeah, I think that might have been the
Chestnut?
Yeah, Chestnut Ridge thing.
So weird.
Yeah, it is weird. And again, we talked about in Pennsylvania, that the case I mentioned previously, where that took place during a period of time where there was UFO and Bigfoot sightings going on at the same time, and they're fucking reporting shadow people and things stomping around their roof.
Man.
But the weirdest thing to me is the electrical interference. So we all, when it comes to poltergeist, we've all heard the stories of lights going on and off and things like that. There was a case in Glasgow in the 1990s where someone had a poltergeist allegedly in their house, and their lights were going on and off, but they also burned out 2 refrigerators, 5 or 6 vacuums, 6 stereos, 8 TVs, and countless light bulbs. And we're familiar with the Newkirks, but before the Hellier thing, they were known for investigating hauntings, and they've had countless times where their electronic equipment that they're using, to whether it be to gauge temperature differences or the EMP readings, whatever, where the batteries will just die, just straight die, despite being charged before they go. That's actually happened on the Skinwalker Ranch a number of times as well. One time they had a survey crew come in because they were looking for like an underground pocket or to something to try to explain what's going on. And they had this digital surveying tool that is able to gauge the depth of or I should say the thickness of the bedrock and see if there's any pockets under there. And it was freshly charged and it died. Well, like within minutes of turning it on. And they brought an extra set of batteries. Those were dead.
That's such a weird phenomenon. We hear about that a lot. I mean, we've heard about that our whole lives when it comes to haunting and haunted places. But I mean, even as a rechargeable battery, if all the power is drained from it, or even if it's instantly recharged, that would generate a bunch of heat, wouldn't it? I mean, that's potentially dangerous.
You'd think so, right? But they're just dead. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing to happen.
Do you remember the Sierra sounds?
Oh God, no! Remind me.
It's supposed to be a sound clip of Bigfoot noises.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The guy who captured them, Ron Moorhead, he said that in his research, they would go up into the Sierra Nevada mountains looking for evidence of Bigfoot, and he said that he went up there with brand new lithium batteries, and he was camping at this point. It was nighttime, and he hears this big popping noise right outside his tent, and he said he thought that it wasn't the sound of something hitting a tree like you normally, but it was just this popping sound that seemed to come from the trees, but it wasn't something hitting the trees. It was just like this weird pop. And then he heard the chattering, which is what the Sierra sounds basically recorded. So he tries to turn his recorder on. Batteries were dead. First time he tried to use it, and they were brand new batteries. He just popped them in. He checked them earlier. Everything was fine. And then as soon as that pop happened and he heard the talking, went to turn it on, dead.
That's bizarre. So Bigfoot has the battery killing ability as well.
Yeah. So no, I don't mean to, I bring all this stuff up not to say that Bigfoot is responsible for poltergeist activity and not to say that poltergeists are responsible for Bigfoot. I bring this up because this is just further pointing to the fact that all of this stuff is connected. But it makes me wonder, because poltergeist activity seemed to center on an individual, possession cases center on an individual, abduction cases center on an individual. Is it possible that paranormal experience itself is linked to an individual? Like, for instance, you and I have both had our fair share of weird things happen. And, we don't know. We're not sitting here trying to label what we've experienced. We just try to explain it in the best way we can in a way that makes sense. But, I've got 4 other brothers, and they don't experience, they haven't had experiences. Why is that? Why? And you can say it's because I've got an interest in it, and so of course I'm going to be more aware. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's plenty of people that are into the paranormal. Like one of my brothers, for instance, very, like, I don't know if he still is, but for many, many years, he was very into UFOs and aliens. Never had a sighting in his life. And he was like very into that shit. And there's plenty of people that study this stuff all their life and never have an experience of their own. They only have other people's experiences. Like, remember that, oh, fuck, I feel like a dick. I can't remember her name. But that author who had the book about her experiences with people who had paranormal experiences. She herself hadn't had any of her own, but she knew people that did. So she wrote this book all about the experiences that people have had, even though she has never had one.
Oakley Green?
It's Louisa Oakley Green. But yeah, it's crazy to me that you can be connected to people that have this experience. You can be, passionate enough to do your own research and have the experience, but not enough to have an experience of your own. You're only getting like the I guess like you're a third party experiencer. You're getting the experience through the experiencer, but never any of your own. So I wonder, like, what is it about certain people that invites this sort of activity? And is it only a certain type of activity for people? Like, like you've had a lot of weird, I don't even want to say ghost experiences, because you've had shadow people experience. You had a fucking Easter bunny experience. Like, what the fuck is that, by the way? That still fucking blows my mind, that shit. What the fuck is that?
When I talked to my dad about that and told him about the whole experience, he said it was something that was trying to appear to me, not to hide, but not to frighten me. Maybe to, he said it was deceitful. It appeared to be something cool, so I wouldn't see what it was because, yeah.
Well, that follows the whole trickster thing, which
Mm-hmm.
I think also goes along with the fairy stuff, which also goes along with all of this. Like, it's all tied together, and that's the main thing, is that it's all tied together. And I think the key, well, I shouldn't say the key, but one of the big keys to learning more about this phenomenon, or phenomena, depending on, if you're lumping it all together or separating it. But the key thing to unlocking this is figuring out why certain people attract the activity and others do not. And if we can figure out what makes those people attractive to this sort of activity, then maybe we can from there engage it more. Try to get it to make an appearance where we can actually study it. But again, it's like it doesn't want to be studied because it kills all our fucking equipment. It's like, fuck your electronics.
Right. And, it seems to be completely at random. Like, you mentioned this stuff many times about the young girls who are going through puberty, and that's definitely a link. That's something that stands out on its own. But for the most part, all walks of people have reported experiencing and dealing with these things. And I don't know. It's, What do you think about the old adage that these people are just sensitive to that stuff? I mean, all these people. I mean, think about that. All these people are on some level sensitive, or psychics got multiple usages now, so I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean, I guess the best term, sensitive, to where they're able to perceive these things. Maybe it's just a lingering sense that humans used to have.
But even if it's a sensitivity, like, that would make sense if it was like a personal experience where it's like, I guess, like, where it's only affecting the person, like they're hearing voices, or they're the ones that see the ghosts. But when it's an event like a UFO abduction, or a Bigfoot sighting, or any other cryptid sort of thing, or a haunting where the whole house is being affected, but it's only centering around an individual. I don't know if that's necessarily a sensitivity. At that point, it seems like they're more an attractor.
That is true. I guess it can go both ways, because there are cases of poltergeist activity to where they definitely are focusing on one person.
Right.
And never experiencing anything beforehand either. It's not like they're like, they had the personality of like, oh, I don't want to be here. There's too much oppression in the atmosphere. They were never sensitive before.
Right. And you can see that in cases where a haunting will follow the person. But then there's cases like the case with the
Thank
the
you
Chilliwack
for listening to the
poltergeist.
Whatcast.
They actually
You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube.
Actually
Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.
That's weird. You could say that it feeds off just the energy of living people alone, but then there's so many pieces of footage of abandoned places that have weird shit go on. Security camera footage where there are no people around. Overnight footage of stores and shit where stuff's knocked off the shelf and shit like that. And there's no energy to draw on there.
Right. So what the fuck?
Yeah. I think we're co-inhabiting this earth with shit that we don't fully understand yet, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. We don't understand what nature's like we think we do. We're like, oh yes, we are the masters of this world. We understand everything, and everything is our dominion. But no, we're fucking small, inconsequential little fucking insects. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when your house is being haunted by a fucking shadow Bigfoot thing? Nothing. You're helpless. You can't do anything.
Yeah, it could literally be like a fucking 1980s sci-fi movie to where, it could be like a number of trees. Like, what if in the next 20 years there's this huge, massive push for our environment like there has been, and then there's just a certain number of trees that are returned to Earth, and it just awakens all these ants all over the world in these heavily forested areas. It could be anything. There could be stuff that's lying dormant.
Yeah, maybe vampires are gonna rise. They're gonna spit the bricks out of their mouth and kick some ass.
Yeah, they're just waiting for a certain date that was preset and some curse that keeps them at bay.
And they're all gonna go and hunt down the Dogman. Curse of the Dogman is what finished off the vampires hundreds of years ago, and then Dogman's like, the forest is now mine. Woo-ha. And then all these vampires are going to spit the bricks out of their mouth, and they're going to rise from their graves. They're going to be like, fuck you, Dogman!
And we find out that they're here to save humanity from the Dogman. And then we just have to coexist.
Or that's what they think, because back in the day, Dogman was a real dick and he just killed everybody. Now Dogman just he's like a hippie. He just wanders around in the woods, just eating fucking mushrooms and sleeping under trees and shit. And then the vampires are going to come back and be like, we will save you, humanity. And then they start killing all the fucking Dogmen. And then we realize that the Dogmen were the ones keeping nature in check, and then some real fucked up shit comes out of the forest, and then we're done for, man. We're done for. So, I guess the moral of the story is, if you see a vampire, stake it in the heart to protect the sanctity of our forests.